Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, yes, my name is Mattias Bolén, threat research analyst here at Truesec, threat intelligence expert here at Truesec.
And yeah, my name is Niklas Kaiser. I look into malware stuff, reversing, that assists in the threat intelligence part as well. And that's sort of our talk will look into that, how to combine different sort of genres of attributing ransomware groups. So
yeah, and we're going to talk about how we have tried to research a new ransomware group. It all started with a ransomware incident in the autumn of 2024. A medium-sized company, which is common these days, less than 50 servers. It was an ESXi ransomware, and it was a previously unknown threat actor.
Called, yeah, Cicada 3301.
Called Cicada 3301. So and we started with the forensic results. It was very familiar for anyone who worked with ransomware. They started with brute forcing net support. Then they installed Screen Connect for remote control, conducted internal reconnaissance, lateral movement, data exfiltration, and then finally deploying the ransomware. All of this, you know, nothing out of the ordinary, but it still, it felt like there's something about it. Like I've seen this before and these particular tool sets before. So we decided to dig a little deeper, and we brought up some indicators of compromise here. Specifically two IP addresses. The first one was the very first IP address used in the attack when they logged in through net support. And the second was the C2 IP for the Screen Connect they used for persistence. We're going to leave those two IP addresses for there. We're just establishing them now, and we will get back to them later in our presentation. But all this was enough for us to want to dig deeper. So we decided to start reversing malware. And this is what my colleague Niklas did.
So one of the first things you do, and yeah, as we said, this is an ESXi ransomware, so targeting VMware environments. And one of the first things you want to do is to understand the binary we're looking at. What is it compiled with, sort of initial triage. And here I used a tool called Dissected, and we can see it is a Rust binary. And what's so special with Rust? Well, Rust, you can cross-compile it. So the same binary, just depending on how you compile it, can run on a Linux environment or a Windows environment. And yeah, VMware is kind of Linux. It's not Linux, but it's kind of Linux. So some functionality from a Linux system you can also find in ESXi. And as we said, like yes, the initial forensic analysis had this kind of similarity. We have seen this before. This kind of hunch when you've been doing this for a while. Stuff starts to I have seen this before. And when it comes to Rust binaries, I would say it's becoming a little bit more popular, but it's still, I would say, it's a minority of the binaries used is done compiled with Rust. And one of the sort of first Rust binaries I reversed that was sort of compiled to run on ESXi was actually BlackCat. So that's like, how are they sort of, is Rust back again? And yeah, for the ESXi, I have only looked at BlackCat before. So that's that caught my interest. Like they look similar. So we started to go down that path, this kind of deja vu feeling. And I compared it to an older sample. I had a BlackCat with the ones I looked at now, with the Cicada one. And the top one, it shows the Cicada sort of parameters. And bear in mind, these are ransomware-as-a-service. So they work with affiliates. We will show this a little bit more in depth later on. But sort of one of the things you can do with the binary, it actually gives you this kind of man file or help, sort of how do I run this binary. So if I compare, and I highlighted some of the interesting parts, you see that the top one with Cicada, we have this --UI, which gives you a graphical user interface when running the ransomware. The same one we see in BlackCat. And this --UI, I've done roughly 100 investigation ransomware, and the --UI I've only seen in BlackCat before. Then we see this kind of dash path, which is actually quite common, but it's this sort of how they have put it, it's kind of looks similar. And then we see this kind of --no VMs -SS, which is the stopping the VM deleting the snapshots. Comparing that to the BlackCat one, we see they have the same things as well. And we will look a little bit deeper on this specific parameter as well. What does it do? But it's sort of this first is kind of, things starts to look similar. If we start looking at sort of when we need to run the ransomware, we needed to provide it a key. And if we provided the wrong key, it will actually terminate. It will do nothing. One it says it's key invalid. That's the BlackCat version, and that's the Cicada version. And the BlackCat says invalid access token. And though if you provided the correct key, the first thing it does, it actually compares the size of the key. So the top one is the Cicada, the bottom one is the BlackCat one. What it does, it compares the sizes, so it needs to be a specific length. And that key is actually a decryption key. So in the Cicada one, it actually decrypts the ransomware note, but also some parts of the configuration. And this is done through SHA-20. So it's symmetric encryption key, but also it encrypts this message says is okay. And that one signal you actually need for the ransomware binary not to terminate. If we compare it to the BlackCat, it has the same thingy. It decrypts the ransomware note by providing the key that is the parameter that starts with this one as well. So you see the ransomware note down there in the debugger field that sort of says the extension, blah, blah, blah. So it has the same thing, notion of decrypting the ransomware note and the configuration to continue onwards. And that is done by providing a specific key that is actually a decryption key as well. And here you can see a enlarged version of the ransomware note says we have stolen the data and put it on the onion link. If we take the ransomware sort of when they encrypt the files and put them next to each other. So to the left, we have the Cicada one, and to the right, we have BlackCat. We see it has this sort of 7 character extension, which is kind of a little bit randomly generated, but it is the same for the same binary. You will get the same ransomware sort of extension. But you see, like the Cicada one, we have BHK something, and with the BlackCat V7. And then if you compare how the ransomware note looks like, we see recover dash the extension note dash, and for the Cicada version, it says data, and for the BlackCat, it says file. So it has the same structure of naming files and the ransomware note itself as well. Then if you look on the parameters, so when it starts killing the VMware itself, and I done like, I don't know, 30, 40 reverse ransomware investigations, including ESXi ransomware. And one of the features they want to do is that they want to, before ransomwaring the ESXi, or specifically the VNDK files, they want to shut down the virtual machine, because if you sort of, you can't remove the snapshot if you don't shut down the virtual machines. And the way it does, it sort of provides this parameter and they use built-in functionality within the ESXi called ESXi CLI. And if I compare the Cicada, which is on the top with the BlackCat on the bottom, we see that the parameters are very similar. For me, it seems like Cicada is just an updated version of BlackCat. And this kind of formatter equals CSV format parameter fields, I've only actually seen once before. And in this, I mean, they usually, ransomware actors, they want to terminate the running VMs, but they always have this different ways of doing it. And this specific one, I've only seen in ReEvil before BlackCat. Now Cicada is using the exact same way of shutting down, enumerating and shutting down. So to summarize, the ESXi ransomware, they are comparing BlackCat with Cicada 3301. We see that both are written in Rust. For file encryption, they both use SHA-20. And this sort of way of, as I explained, shutting down the virtual machines, they use almost identical usage of ESXi CLI. This usage of --UI to get this sort of graphical interface for ransom, debugging kind of thingy when you ransomware. And then this, you need to provide this parameter, which is actually a decryption key to get the binary starting, otherwise it will terminate. They have the same naming convention of how the file and the ransomware node looks like. And also, because remember, they are cross-compiled, you can actually find lists of Windows services and processes that it wants to terminate. So this is sort of built in this configuration list. And if I take the BlackCat one and I compare it to this sort of list, they're roughly 50 plus processes and services. And if I put them next to each other, they are identical. The processes are identical, that list. And then if I put the Cicada one next to the BlackCat one for the services, they are identical until it's roughly like 50 of them. And then this list are identical. And then 51, Cicada continues onwards, which sort of is more like it's an updated version of the same list. And also, I want to give credit to Palo Alto and Morphisec, who has done reversing on the Windows binary side of the house. And they came to the same conclusion that we at Truesec did, that the binaries are very similar to the BlackCat one. And I really want to highlight here this usage of BCD-edit, which is a built-in tool in Windows. So what it does is actually you can control when a Windows computer is going to boot into safe boot, how it should boot. And the uses of this for a malicious purpose is that if you go into safe boot, you can disable both the EDRs and AV solutions, for troubleshooting purposes. And this way of utilizing BCD-edit to disable protection mechanisms, I've only seen, because I've done ransomware analysis on BlackCat Windows binaries as well. And the only one I've seen use BCD-edit for sort of this malicious purpose is BlackCat as well. They also came, Palo Alto and Morphisec, that's, they could see similar tool setting, like other tooling, but also sharing different infrastructures. So just by looking at sort of other reports of reversing and looking at the binaries, like, is there a connection? And yes, I would say there is a connection. So
yes. So we know there's a connection between the malware, definitely. But that's not enough to say that there's a connection between the groups behind. So now we have to go from forensics to go into looking at the groups behind it. And as I won't talk too much about it because it's already mentioned before, BlackCat folded around the first week in March. And after they had suffered a takedown. And the last thing they did was a exit scam where the leaders apparently defrauded at least one of their affiliates of the last outstanding ransom money, the Change Healthcare. So we know that they ended their activities. So, and we have a gap in our timeline between they ended when Cicada set up. So we want to fill that time and look more into the group. We know that there is something else there. Remember, we showed you the IOCs, the 109, 107 IP addresses that was used in the as the C2 for the Screen Connect. This is an overview of that IP address over time. It's a little difficult to read because the output is in the reverse. So it starts July and then it actually reads backwards in time. July, it's around this time, the blue and yellow there to the left bars represent when this IP address starts being used maliciously, what later becomes the Screen Connect. The same IP address, if we go all the way to the right side, we can see back in November, back when BlackCat was still active, it was observed a specific computer name active on this particular IP address. After that, there were a lot of empty space where nothing happened here. So what is that? Is there anything we can find out about this particular machine name associated with this IP address in November? Well, if we Google it, the first hit we get is a report by Signia about BlackCat. And if we look at the IOCs provided there, we notice that, yes, this exact machine name, this host name, was used in a BlackCat attack. So this machine was used in a BlackCat attack in November, and then it was appeared in a Cicada attack. Getting interesting. There's definitely a link here. So again, we know that it's some kind of a link is here, but we need to fill more of the information here. So who are these Cicada 301 group? Well, this is their advertising site where they advertise for their ransomware as a service. And just to explain what is ransomware as a service, it's been mentioned by previous. It's basically it's a division of effort. It's a business model used by many ransomware groups, but not all, where the ransomware group develops malware, develops tools, hosts stolen data, assist in negotiations, and usually take about 15 to 20% of the ransom money. And then you have freelance affiliates that does the actual hacking, uses the toolkit, steals data, determines the ransom sum, and take about 80 to 85% of the ransom. And the ransomware group, they charge a less percentage, but their money comes from the fact that they can have just about as many ransomware affiliates as possible. So they get 15 to 20% of all ransom attacks in the name of the ransomware group, whereas the affiliates only get this money from the ones they are actually responsible for. And I think the largest group I've seen was at its heyday, Lockbit had somewhere between 50 and 100 affiliates. So it ends up quite a lot of money for the ransomware group, even if they only take 15 to 20% of the ransom sum. Oops, sorry, that was one too far. And thanks to Group IB, we also know a little bit of the inside of this ransomware as a service group, because they managed to get access to the dashboard used by the ransomware criminals. And this is the dashboard an affiliate sees when they log in to start using the ransomware as a service operation. And by the data provided from being inside the portal, we can determine that this portal was opened up on May 4th, 2024. They had a major update of the ransomware function on June 13. They added a data leak file server to post stolen data if the victim refused to pay on June 15, and a phone bank support on June 18. So that was what we got inside the portal. Then we have published information. Their data leak site had 4 victims listed between June 15 and 19, and no other victim until August the 8th. And finally, on the cybercrime forums, we can see that they posted recruitment ads on XSS, first time June 19, recruitments of RAMP, another cybercrime forum, June 29, and they posted escrow Bitcoin on XSS on June 29. This is important because in the Russian language cybercrime ecosystem, forums like XSS acts like honest brokers between cyber criminals. Collaboration between cyber criminals can sometimes be trust issues because they're all criminals. And the forums is usually act as honest brokers here. You post escrow there, and then they hold on to the money until the transaction is cleared. And so if you want to do business, you usually have to post a number of Bitcoins there. So it's very unlikely that they had actually signed any affiliates before June 29, because that was when they had actually posted escrow. So anything before the June 29th was probably done by themselves, not by affiliates. So if we put all these different information in a timeline to explain, we see that the portal opens on May 4th. Then we have a crunch week in June where they post a new version, updated version of the ransomware. The same day as they actually announced that now their data leak file server is live, they also post their first victim. They add this ability to make phone calls, check it out, make sure everything works, post 3 more victims to pad out the number and make it look like they're actually an active group. And then when everything looks good, they post an ad on XSS. And then 10 days later, they also post Bitcoin on XSS and post an ad on RAMP that we're ready, we're signing affiliates now. And if we take all this and then put it into our larger timeline, we can see that this starts filling up the time between the end of BlackCat and the starting of Cicada. So this is the setting up and recruiting phase before they're fully operational in August. But there's still some time left. We still want to see what happened. Can we get even further, deeper down into their preparation? To do that, we're going to try and look at the people behind Cicada. Now, we don't know who they are, but we know the name of the moniker of the person who claims to be spokesperson for Cicada 31. A moniker called Abyss Walker is the spokesperson for Cicada 3301. He's the one who posts the recruitment on XSS. This Abyss Walker, if we look at his posts on XSS, the name is registered in June, so it's registered for the campaign. But the person behind this obviously is a veteran cyber criminal. He posts in discussions about R-Evil in a way that looks like he had inside knowledge of possibly of what R-Evil was doing. So it's a persona created for this ransomware as a service, but this is not his first rodeo. And also interesting, one of his posts gets recommended by another person there who's been active since 2022. And guess what? That person says, oh, I recommend this person, only positive vibration. He lists himself as a malware programmer who programs in Rust. Now that's interesting.
So who is this developer? Well, he goes by the nickname of Mr. Jorge. And as stated, he is a Rust programmer. And on another post, he wants to show how satisfied his customers are with his ability to program malware. So, because some of the customers, they are not users of XSS. So instead, he poses the transactions of Bitcoin to his wallet. And thanks to that, we can actually extract his Bitcoin wallet. And you remember, he said, work with Ibis Walker and only positive emotions. And looking at his wallet, we can see that in April, there was a transaction from an unknown wallet of a half of a Bitcoin, which is roughly 50,000 K up or down, depending on, it's quite volatile, but it's 50,000 US dollar, which is quite a lot of money. And also like that's I would guess it's the amount it costs to develop a ransomware. And so we don't have, it's not a smoking gun, but we just raised the question. It fits the timeline, it's in this kind of gap between May and March. And could this be the payment for building the ransomware for Cicada 3301? And also remember, we had two IPs in the beginning. We had the Screen Connect C2, but we also have this sort of brute forcing botnet. That started in March 15. And yet in our incident we investigated, they did a brute forcing towards net support. And that came from this IP. That IP first appeared in March 15 and was most active in March and April. And was just doing a lot of brute forcing. It was 10,000 bots, and it was called Brutus botnets. And we want to give shout out to Annoyed Engineer, did an excellent blog post about, which I really recommend. So if we put this into the greater timeline, we have this sort of preparation phase where there might have been a Bitcoin transaction going to building. Well, there is a Rust developer that might have received a payment of half a Bitcoin in April. And we see the Brutus botnet, rise to fame and doing its badness in March all the way up to May. So that sort of starts filling up these gaps.
So if we don't revisit this whole timeline, we have BlackCat, they get the takedown, and then they finally exit with an exit scam 1st of March. 2 weeks later, the Brutus botnet start working, and possibly someone pays shortly after, someone starts paying money to a Rust programmer to build a ransomware. And on May 4th, the first iteration of this ransomware-as-a-service program is active. They begin setting up, they refine, set up all the data leak server, phone support, post a few victims. They most likely hack themselves. And then when they think everything is up and running, they start recruiting. And in August, the ransomware-as-a-service is fully operational, and they start posting victims. This, again, looks like a pretty neat timeline of events. There's a lot of circumstantial information here, but I think we can still learn a few things on this, like by combining technical and forensic analysis with OSINT from multiple sources, from XSS, from various ground forums, from their own postings, we can get a more holistic view of a threat actor. And by building timelines like this helps us visualize campaigns. We can also tell that starting a new ransomware as a service is not a trivial task. There's several months going on here from the decision that they need to start over till they're fully up and running. So even if disrupting a ransomware as a service group like BlackCat or like Lockbit can seem a futile because they keep rebranding and pop up, we can see it's not a trivial task to start up again. And again, we have no firm evidence that Cicada 3301 is just a rebrand of BlackCat, but we think everything points to the fact that someone who was involved with BlackCat, either a few members of the original BlackCat group, or possibly one of the major affiliates that decided to strike it out on their own, are behind Cicada. And finally, I think cyber threat intelligence done best in collaboration can aid in disrupting ransomware actors. One thing that is worth knowing that after all these work, Cicada 3301 really hasn't taken off. They haven't posted that many victims compared to all the effort they put into starting it. And it's possible that all the writing about Cicada, the fact that we and other CTI researchers posted about them, linked them to BlackCat, the guys behind the exit scam, maybe stay away from them, and or the fact that someone managed to post inside data from their panel helped to make them seem a little too hot, and they never really got as many victims as they hoped. That was the end of what we had to say. I hope you find it interesting.
Thank you very much.